Hello and welcome to Destination Draft Day. I'm Michael Rochman, Nick Durst, also here as well. We are very excited to get to talk to you. We missed Monday's show. Apologies on my end. A little bit busy with work and just didn't end up happening. But we're here today. Very much have a lot to talk about. There has been a jam-packed, just filled with news information regarding NFL, college football, and everything in between. But we appreciate everyone who's here to tune in today. And, before we get started with any of it, Nick Durst, how you doing? And it seems as though either I've been lost or Nick has. Well, that's fine. So we're going to talk first about the most recent news, and that is Jacksonville Jaguars hiring Doug Peterson. And in this situation, Doug Peterson has been one of the most unique situations as a coach because, he was fresh off of a recent Super Bowl victory for the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, with all the tension and turmoil, kind of led to the departure of Doug Peterson. It felt like that was them choosing Carson Wentz. Then they departed with Carson Wentz. So, it's a very peculiar situation. It's a very interesting one that really kind of makes you question. I mean, what was the Eagles' plan there if they weren't really kind of choosing the side of either? Nick, we've seen some weird, wacky NFL storylines, but what's your thoughts on the whole Doug Peterson Wentz situation, and do you feel like this is a good hire for Jacksonville?
He has the credentials to make it a good hire. Do I think Doug Peterson's going to lead the Jaguars Super Bowl? No. There's never been a head coach who has won a Super Bowl and then gone to another team and won another Super Bowl. So, I thought maybe they were going to try to get somebody to grow with Lawrence, but Peterson is definitely a much better hire and a much safer hire than Byron Leftwich. So I don't understand why the Jaguars fan base is so up in arms here with owner Shad Khan. If you look at the people out there, nobody has a better resume than Doug Peterson.
Yeah, and, there's plenty of candidates that are going to be considered, and there's still some openings out there. But the other hiring was Kevin O'Connell seems to be, I believe, set in stone to be the Minnesota head coach. I'm not sure if it's official just yet, but, that's going to be an interesting one. The McVay tree seems to be growing further and further throughout the NFL. You could argue that the McVay-Shanahan tree kind of has a 100% hit rate right now with all the success that's been going on. Obviously, Saleh and Staley in their first year, so we'll have to wait and see on them. But Zach Taylor in the Super Bowl, Shanahan, McVay obviously running things in terms of just offensive success. There's been a lot of spread out just names. LaFleur in Green Bay obviously has had a very successful start to his coaching career. O'Connell's a risky hire. I think a lot of people kind of share that sentiment that this is someone very young, very inexperienced, but at the same time, this is one of the safest systems in the NFL. So what are your thoughts on the most likely Kevin O'Connell hire for the Minnesota Vikings?
I think they should have offered Harbaugh as much money as he wanted. So I don't know what they're doing there. You put Jim Harbaugh with Kirk Cousins in a division where perhaps there's no Aaron Rodgers, put him in a conference where there's no Tom Brady, there's no Sean Payton. I mean, the Vikings with Harbaugh are 100% a playoff team. And you could be looking at potential Super Bowl contenders because you look at next year, if Rodgers is back in Green Bay, then they'll be a top team. They'll be a contender. The Rams should be a contender again, but it's very hard 2 years in a row to get to the Super Bowl. And they're going to lose Odell Beckham Jr. most likely. I don't say they're going to have him, Woods, and Cup. The Cardinals will be in it. I think the Saints are going to be a disaster. I don't think the Bucs are going to be competitive because they're going to lose Gronk. They're going to lose Brady. So I don't know why you wouldn't go with Harbaugh. And I think Harbaugh agrees. He's like, what the heck? Now, I don't understand, you're going to pick him from the Rams now as your head coach. To me, it's kind of like, I don't really know. What has this guy done? I mean, sure, I got to take a chance sometimes, but I don't know. I felt they needed a veteran, voice in there. Obviously, they had Zimmer and I guess they felt it took them as far as they can, so they want to go the total opposite direction with the youth movement. But I got a problem with some of these coordinators or pass game coordinators getting these jobs. Like the Giants are going to hire Kakis from the Chiefs to be their offensive coordinator because he's the QB coach for Patrick Mahomes. I don't think he has any impact on what Patrick Mahomes is doing. This is the same. Ben McAdoo was the QB coach for Aaron Rodgers. So I'm always very weary about hiring people who are coming from such a great spot because of an awesome QB or, some sort of like an awesome offensive talent player wise. To me, it kind of is a bit of a red flag. So it's, it's just a general thing out there that confuses me. And the biggest thing that confused me the most is the fact that Josh McDaniels gets hired by the Raiders. I mean, is he qualified? Should he be a head coach? Absolutely. But I thought he was going to stay in New England. He's been there for 10 years. He could have left multiple times to be head coach. And I guess the Raiders players are not happy about this because they wanted Bisaccia back. Bisaccia now free agent, I guess. So hopefully somebody signs him. Because imagine this guy brings his team to the playoffs as a head coach interim, and now he doesn't have a job next season, or he's probably not going to get an offensive coordinator job at this point. If anything, he's got to sign on as like a receiver coach or a QB coach. Sucks for him. So I don't know what's going on in Las Vegas, but they better hope that the players can rally behind McDaniels. And if not in the playoffs next year, then they obviously made the wrong decision.
Yeah, and Bisaccia sounds like he's probably going to be the special teams coach in Jacksonville from what the rumors seem to indicate, but it's a very interesting situation. And to your point, I do like Mike Kafka a lot. He's been credited with a lot of the development of Mahomes, so I do trust him. I agree with you, though, that a lot of guys kind of get hired on just because of their success with these other coaches. I mean, Gase was a prime example of that, where he kind of worked with Manning and was just credited with being this offensive mastermind, but Peyton Manning was already the superstar in the NFL, so it's definitely it's a slippery slope where like you can't just automatically go with someone who has the best offense and say, oh, this guy absolutely deserves it. But there are still plenty of examples where these coaches, very much are qualified and they just kind of get passed over. And then, we have to bring up the Brian Flores situation, suing the NFL, suing a few NFL teams and organizations for what is perceived to be, kind of just using him as a means to pleasing the Rooney Rule. The speculation on our end is probably going to be very limited because we don't know the situation entirely. But assuming that this truly is the case, what is the damage that it could do to the NFL?
It's hard to say because the NFL got to it everything, but I hope Flores is able to take them down here and do something here. Flores is, we're hearing the Texans want to hire Josh McCown as their coach. He hasn't even coached like a high school JV team as a quarterback coach or anything. So I don't understand why the Texans think, oh, we're going to bring him in here and he's going to be a good head coach with no coaching experience at any level. Not even I'm talking head coach, literally no experience anywhere. Over a guy like Brian Flores, who if you bring Flores in, it seems like Deshaun Watson is going to be ready to play again. So that's just, it's messed up. I could totally believe John Elway came into a meeting late and hungover and showed disrespect to Flores. You saw that Belichick text, which was pretty wild. The Giants released a statement. Their timeline seemed to check out, but, I don't know why Mara and Tish are telling Bill Belichick who they're hiring. Dable was with the Patriots for like one season as some sort of coach. So why is it going to him? Belichick doesn't know his Brian's. It's a real disgrace. And now, Flores said himself, I know this is a risk because I might never coach in the league again, but it's not, I don't know. This is not, if this moves as fast as the Sean Watson situation, it's not going to be resolved anytime soon. And Flores might be done coaching in the league. But at the very least, I think Belichick owes it to him to hire him as a coach next year.
Yeah, I'm very sad about the situation just because I think Flores is a wonderful coach. I've said that time and time again on the show. And just based on kind of what we've seen from the league, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of have this unwritten thing where they kind of like blackball him from the league. I hope it doesn't happen. I think he's one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. I think he is a very good coach. I think a lot of the news that came out of Miami about him being this egotistical problem, I think was very much a little bit of a smear campaign. So in regards to Flores, I mean, I want to see him be a coach again. I would be thrilled if somehow Belichick is able to convince him to come be defense coordinator, and then he's the heir apparent to Belichick. I would be absolutely
this is
happy
what
to see.
I think. If Flores doesn't get a coaching job this season, I don't think he's going to get a head coaching job again. But I think he should be the top name in the college market next year.
I think he's a tremendous defensive mind that if he were to take on the college game, especially after a move like this, we've seen a lot of things that create momentum in terms of building that community, building that culture. A guy that's willing to risk his job for something that's right and that a lot of people feel strongly about would be absolutely huge and speak volumes to families of recruits, the recruits themselves, the players on the current roster, players around college football, with especially how active the transfer portal is. A lot of people would want to play under Flores after a move like this. So, in a situation like Auburn, where Brian Harsin has been kind of rumored to potentially be on the outs now due to some situations, Jim Harbaugh, if he were to have left, I think he's someone that if I were looking at hiring a college coach, Brian Flores is someone that I would really have high on my priority list if he'd be willing to do the college side of it. I think that's kind of the big thing is some of these coaches don't want to do the recruiting aspect of it all.
I think he'd be great for Texas after Sarkisian wins 2 or 3 games this year and they finally fire him. But Sarkisian, he can go back to Alabama as a coordinator. So, this coordinator game is going to be crazy here, especially with your Patriots. We're hearing Adam Gase. We've heard maybe Joe Judge is the offensive coordinator, which is surprising because he was a special teams guy. And, of course, Bill O'Brien. So where do you see this shaking out between those 3 guys and who Bill will ultimately hire?
Yeah, I think I'd go with Bill O'Brien. I think so far the Alabama fan base obviously doesn't control it, but they don't seem to be all sold on O'Brien. I think at the very least, kind of bring in O'Brien, let him kind of get his offense play calling going, help out our offense, kind of open up the passing game a little bit, and probably, he'll get a college head coaching job after that or something. But I think that's where I would go. I wouldn't be surprised if Ivan Fears gets the job. He's a little bit older, but I think he's been around the offense for such a long time that he's probably got him very much picked up. Troy Brown's another guy that, former player. Bill's kind of shown that ability to let the players of the past kind of be young, up and rising coordinators, and Troy Brown's kind of made those steps. Wouldn't surprise me if he's someone that maybe comes into it, but ultimately I want to see this be a younger hire just because I want to see this offense really kind of embrace the new age of the NFL. I think Mac Jones in year 2 needs to pass the ball a little bit more, needs to be a little bit more aggressive in his passing downfield. And I think that's what you kind of get with youth. And obviously I'm not at all trying to say that the Patriots should change their culture, but I just think that getting a little younger, getting a little bit more open-minded with the offense, especially with a young QB, would be huge.
So I'm guessing you don't want Charlie Weiss to return as offensive coordinator since he's 65.
Yeah, probably not sold on Weiss. It depends, though. I mean, really, it's just if these guys are willing to open up the offense, kind of make it into a development of Mac Jones, help him become the QB that I think he can't become, then, yeah, I'm open to whoever.
Well, Mac Jones will be playing in the Pro Bowl this Sunday. He's a replacement there. I was watching some of the skills competition last night, and it was just very bizarre. And the dodgeball game had an awful camera angle, so I couldn't really get into it. But I know you'll be locked into that. I mean, you had the East-West Shrine game last night, right? So did you check any of that out? And how did the Notre Dame quarterback look? Seems like he's rising up the ranks now.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to check it out. I'm probably going to try to check out that film on it this weekend. But, I think a lot of these bowl games are becoming more and more apparent to, just having a larger player base. And especially in a year like this where so many seniors were able to go back to school, it really kind of elevated the talent level across college football. And I think that's going to be the case for about the next 3-4 years now that everyone got that extra year of eligibility. Going to be very fun to see for these showcase games. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if one of these games sort of adapts and opens themselves up to underclassmen, because I think giving everyone a chance to kind of play is huge. And I know that the Senior Bowl has kind of made itself on this being a senior showcase. And I think that's absolutely great. But if you're a game that's viewed third, fourth in line, then maybe kind of try to figure it out. I think at the time there wasn't enough underclassmen, but now with as many that are declaring, with as many options that there are, you don't say just underclassmen or anything, but you just open it up to everyone that wants to get involved. And I think you could create probably the premier event of the draft off season.
Yeah. And Jack Cohn won the Pat Tillman Award, which was the MVP of the game. But yeah, I think if you get some juniors in the games, even if the underclassmen as like a kind of like a sophomores looking ahead for the next season that are going to declare as juniors, I think there would be a lot of buzz to it. Hopefully they can do the game a little earlier though. I think it's tougher for these players to have to sit out for 8 weeks and then be like, oh my gosh, somebody rev it up here to play in the game. But it's going to be interesting to get the Senior Bowl, of course, next week. And then, of course, the combines and whatnot. So it's going to be pretty crazy. I guess, just to kind of wrap up like the off season here with, the movement, there is some jobs still available. We know Harbaugh's going back to Michigan, but, why do you think Harbaugh was like Vikings or nothing? Like he didn't want to go anywhere else. And what do you think ultimately happened there that he's like, all right, I'm just going to stay at Michigan for another year?
Yeah, it sounded like the rumored situation was he wanted to be 100% believed in. And when he went to Minnesota, it felt more like a, prove to us why you should be the guy rather than, we're very excited to bring you in. And I guess from that, he just didn't like the feeling of it. The gut feeling was, I'm believed in at Michigan right now. I just had this tremendous year. I want to build on that momentum. I love Michigan. I think he's always been like fully invested in Michigan. It's just the fact that the NFL was there, how close he was to getting fired from Michigan kind of weighed on his mind. And he was thinking, look, things can change on a dime. Maybe I should go to the NFL, kind of get my fresh start and really kind of see what I can do again, because last time it went well, it just ended up with a bad GM that kind of split everything. So this time I think there's an opportunity for him to really kind of go to the NFL, but I think he was hoping that he was more of a prioritized type candidate than just another candidate that was being optioned as.
Absolutely. I guess he was just didn't like the experience, or maybe nobody else wanted to interview him. I don't know. Very confusing, but there is some more openings still available, and we'll see when those get wrapped up. It seems like the Dolphins are having a really tough time of trying to find a quality coach there. I don't know. Are they going to be able to find somebody better than Brian Flores, Michael?
Absolutely not. I really love Flores, and I think really what you will see is they'll probably end up going with like a Mike McDaniel as their head coach. But it just seems like there are a lot of coaches that just would be disappointing. I mean, Vance Joseph was a name that was extremely rumored whenever it came to Miami, but Vance Joseph was a bad head coach and hasn't really done that well as the defensive coordinator of Arizona. Arizona's bread and butter is their offense. I mean, they've kind of made their way with great defensive line because you have a J.J. Watt, a Chandler Jones. Vance Joseph wasted a lot of Isaiah Simmons' rookie year trying to force him into just playing one role instead of allowing him to be versatile. So I don't know. I'm not here to just completely shame someone, but hiring Vance Joseph after Brian Flores would just, I think, be a horrible hire for Miami. And that's been a guy that's been rumored for the job. At least going with an offense like Mike McDaniel or just someone of that kind of similar skill set where you're offensive minded, quick passing game type QB that's going to make it to where Tua is kind of comfortable in the backfield and has his job as easy as possible. I at least like that because that's kind of why you fired Flores, was because you're investing into Tua. So I think you have to go offensive minded here. You have to get someone that's going to make the job simple, play to his strengths, get some RPO in there, get some quick running game, quick passes, get someone in the backfield that can be dependable for your QB and relied on. And that's where I think the Dolphins need to go. And right now, I haven't heard a lot of rumors around the position, but it feels like, they need to go offensive or else this is just a horrible hire.
Going to be interesting. Of course, the last coaching thing I wanted to discuss real quick is the Broncos hiring Justin Houghton as their offensive coordinator, who is the QB coach for Rodgers. So obviously, they go heavy into the Packers here with Hackett and Houghton. They must think they're getting Aaron Rodgers. To me, if Aaron Rodgers is all about winning championships at this point, then he'd be a fool to leave the NFC with the way it's shaking up next season. Where if they're back, I know the Rams are in the Super Bowl. If Rodgers is back next year, they're the favorites to win the NFC again. They're going to win 13 games. You go to Denver, you got to deal with Mahomes twice a year. You got to deal with Carr twice a year. You got to deal with Herbert twice a year. You got to worry about Mahomes. You got to worry about Josh Allen. So there's a lot of stiff competition for you just to get to the playoffs. Now, is Aaron Rodgers going to get the Broncos to the playoffs? I'm sure. However, the path to the championship is going to be significantly harder playing in the AFC West than it would be in the NFC North. So do you think Rodgers weighs that decision at all? Or is it really just all about, I'm not happy with the front office here and I want to get out of Wisconsin?
Yeah, I'm not really 100% sold on the Broncos necessarily being this clear runaway with Rodgers. I do think that they would be absolutely fantastic in terms of just roster talent and everything. But at the same time, that's going to be a crazy division if Rodgers ends up a Bronco, because the Raiders just made playoffs. The Chargers are a young up-and-coming team with Justin Herbert developing year after year. The Chiefs are consistently a playoff contender and probably the favorite for as long as Mahomes is there as QB, And then, like you said, there's teams like Buffalo. There's teams like Cincinnati who just made it. There's going to be other teams in the mix as well. So this is going to be a very tough path. If Rodgers is on the Broncos, they certainly have a great chance to be a very good team, but it's going to be a very difficult task, very difficult path, and just one of the harder situations for Rodgers. Now, when I look at the teams that could potentially bring in Rodgers, I've kind of said Steelers and Broncos seem like the best bets in terms of just turning it around right away. Maybe Indianapolis could be another one. But really, I just think that there is so much potential here for Rodgers to find success with the Packers. And I feel like the Packers are foolish if they kind of move on from Rodgers. And I know that Rodgers is old. I know that he hasn't been a part of this Super Bowl run yet because of, he has, but he hasn't lately been to the Super Bowl, and there's been questions about why that is. And part of it is kind of blamed on Rodgers a little bit. I don't know if it's warranted. But I feel like I ride with Rodgers instead of Love and then GM, because I just think Rodgers has kind of been the legend of my franchise for the past, decade and a half almost. So we're looking at a guy that's being almost pushed out despite being one of the best QBs in the NFL. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's a risky move for the Packers. I know that Rodgers kind of said it himself that he wants out, but at the same time, I feel like the Packers kind of obliging for this and not kind of trying to just make it work seems like a risky move to me.
So the only place that I think would make sense for him to go if he's going to leave Green Bay would be Tampa Bay. Go replace Tom Brady. That could be a win now team still if he goes there, because a lot of guys will stay and not test the waters because they were there on the cheap to play with Brady. They'll stay to play with Rodgers. Now, is Rob Gronkowski going to play? I doubt it. I think he's going to retire. He only wants to hurt Tom Brady, which sucks. And Tom Brady retiring, to me, I hate it. I thought he should have announced that next season would be his last season, have a going away tour. I think they're one of the favorite. They had a great shot to win the championship next year. But I think if Rodgers wants to go anywhere, I think that's the only place he should really consider, because it would be an easy path. But with him out, with Brady out of there, Gronk out of there, Peyton out of the South, the Panthers being a mess, now you got to look at the Falcons as potentially being the South champs next year because they have the best quarterback. But, Michael, what are your thoughts first on Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski retiring?
Yeah, if anyone deserves to go out however they want, it's definitely Tom Brady and Gronk himself. But, man, it's sad to see. I thought the Bucs still very much could contend. I think if I had to speculate with absolutely no idea, so this is just pure speculation, I assume he won a ring with Tampa Bay. His wife said, all right, you won without the Patriots, you won without Bill. Can you retire now? Because we know they've been like, I don't think arguing, but like
Right.
arguing about when Brady would retire. So I think, he won the Super Bowl ring. She was like, all right, you can retire now, right? And he's like, I mean, I just won. I feel like we can win again next year. I'll play till I lose. And she was like, fine. And I think they lost. And I think he wanted to come back a little bit, but at the same time, I think there was a little bit of, I gave my word. I think this is a situation where I've done all I can. Going through another year may not be so easy. I think there's more to it than just his passion for football. I don't think the love of the game is ever going to die for Brady. I don't think the grind will ever stop for Brady. He's going to be like Kobe, where the day after his retirement, he was like in the gymnasium at 4 a.m. still grinding and sweating and just breaking up everything to where it's just like how is this guy like wired like this? But I think that Brady retiring is extremely sad because this is the greatest of all time, and Gronk is one of the best tight end talents, if not the best. So there's just so much that you're losing from the game of football, but at the same time, we're very lucky to have got to watch it. I was very lucky to be a 5-year-old kid and just say like, oh, I want to be a Patriots fan. This team is good, so I'm going to root for them. And I stuck with it. And Brady was I was probably one of the most spoiled football fans out there because of it. So, I love Tom Brady. I love the Patriots, and I loved watching the Bucs for these past 2 years. And I think the Bucs are very much still a contender, but the legacy that Tom Brady leaves behind and what they now lose with Brady going into retirement is definitely something that they have to adapt for and overcome, and it's going to be very tough to do.
It's a changing of the guard in the NFL. Just over the last year, we lost Drew Brees, Philip Rivers, Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, and now Tom Brady. Go back even a little further. We lost Andrew Luck. We lost Peyton Manning. So all the greats that we grew up watching here are all gone now. So it's a totally different era in the NFL, and we're going to see how that shakes out. One guy that there's still other guys there. I'll talk about somebody in a second. But first, I wanted to ask you your thoughts on Tom Brady not mentioning anything about the Patriots in his going away Instagram post. I thought it was pretty shocking.
Yeah, I think it was definitely shocking. He did end up making some posts about the Patriots and Bill and everything. But I think, I don't know, I'd like to believe that it was just in his mind, he had already kind of said his goodbye to New England, so he didn't feel the need to again. But I think it's pretty clear that there's still a little bit of animosity there. I don't think he was happy to have been pushed out when he felt like he was as good as he was. So then whenever he decided to kind of go on his own terms instead of being, kind of rallied for to be pushed out by Bill, then he kind of felt hurt by the fact of the situation. He was always open about he probably will get pushed out, but I think he kind of thought that he would be the exception because he was able to maintain his skill set for as long as he was, and he didn't feel like he was done. And I think he also just felt like he wasn't the problem when there were problems, and he proved that by going and dominating with Tampa Bay. But, I think that's just some small stuff. It's almost, again, I go back to Kobe. It's a lot like Kobe and Shaq, where there's probably a little bit of like tension there in terms of just the competitive experience and fire that they both have. But I think ultimately there's still a lot of love there, regardless of what all goes down.
So does Robert Kraft and the Patriots retire Tom Brady's jersey this upcoming season, or they wait another year?
I think absolutely they just do it right away. I mean, 12 hasn't even been worn yet, so I think now once he does his official retirement ceremony, I think he's going to sign a day-long contract with the Patriots. He'll retire, and then I assume Robert Kraft will say then and there, like, there will never be a number 12 for New England. We're retiring it, and then they'll retire at some game next year. But
they got it. They have to do it when the Patriots host the Jets. That's when they have to do it.
I could see it. I don't know when specifically they'll do it, but I think Patriots Jets would be very fitting.
Absolutely. All right. Now, the other quarterback I wanted to touch on, of the old guard, Russell Wilson. Now, his former teammate, KJ Wright, came out yesterday and said, Russell Wilson needs to take a pay cut to help the Seahawks. Well, I think Russell Wilson needs to take his talents elsewhere, get out of Seattle. How do you see this playing out here?
I don't know. I feel like Seattle's going to want to hold on to him, which may lead to where Russ doesn't really have an option. Because I don't think Russell Wilson hates Seattle to where he's just like not going to play. So I think it's kind of up to Seattle. Like, hey, do we think we can turn things around before Russ is just demanding a trade, or before Russ is, just too old to really keep up with what our new roster would be? And I think in their mind they're saying yes. I don't know how I feel personally, but I think they kind of showed enough promise to end the season that I don't mind them running it back. I think getting younger, adding more talent in the draft and free agency, I think that's huge. But I think with a healthy Russ, they're a playoff team. We've seen them be a playoff team like consistently with Russell Wilson as QB. So I think without the injury, they probably would have been again this year. But
I think they need to go to Pete Carroll.
Contend?
Get rid of Pete Carroll, and then I think Wilson. You go all in on Wilson. Let him pick his head coach. I think this is going to be Pete Carroll's last season.
I think so too. I think unless they win like 2 games in the playoffs, then this is it for Russ. Or not for Russ, for Pete Carroll. I think they are ultimately going to say, like, look, we like Pete. He won a Super Bowl. He got us there twice. We think he's an excellent coach. But right now, things aren't working in Seattle, so we need to move on. And I can't blame him. I think while Pete Carroll is a good coach, something's been going on in Seattle, and they need to kind of fix that. And I also blame John Schneider for the terrible first-round draft picks that they've consistently made for trading for a strong safety. It's bad moves consistently, and I feel like it's just an ego problem because he drafted this, Legion of Boom, and then it felt like he just kind of thought, oh, I can outsmart the NFL, and he was drafting picks that were going like 3 rounds too early, and they just were not panning out.
Now to their NFC West rivals in the game from last Sunday, Rams, 49ers. A lot of people are blaming Garoppolo for this. I don't get it, Michael. If what got you to the dance and got you through the whole game, your strategy is we're going to run the ball for the first 3.5 quarters, you can't expect them at the last 7 minutes to change your strategy and say, we got to go all out with the pass here, and we got to expect Garoppolo to make the plays with pressure on his face and whatnot. I don't like the way that Garoppolo is going out there. I thought he played very well for the 49ers over his career. I just looked at their win-loss record with him in the lineup versus with him out of it. Obviously, he missed the whole year a few years back. I think you put Garoppolo on the Steelers next year, they're going to be in the playoffs as well. So just interesting to how that all shaked out. But the Rams, they won. Kupp was great again. Odell Beckham Jr. was incredible, and the Rams are going back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of making the trade pay off because this is everything that they've kind of been after, is getting to the Super Bowl, getting into contention. Will they win it? Who knows? I mean, Cincinnati's been riding momentum. We've kind of said each week, like, wouldn't be surprised if Cincy wins. Like, that's been the case every single time. Like, right. I think we thought Cincy would win against Las Vegas, but then after that, it was, Tennessee probably wins, but wouldn't be surprised if Cincy does. Kansas City probably wins, but wouldn't be surprised if Cincy does. Los Angeles probably wins, but wouldn't be surprised if Cincy does. I think this is going to be a very fun game. I think these are 2 very rootable teams. Stafford, Joe Burrow, very likable QBs. Stafford obviously spent a career in Detroit where it just was underachieved team success. When he got hurt, the team was going like 3-13. So I think it kind of shows like Stafford was a big part of that. Joe Burrow, young QB, really has put the league on notice that he is going to be one of the big names in the future. And I'm really excited to see this one. I think it's going to be the Rams, but ultimately I wouldn't be surprised if Cincy gets this one. And I think Cincy, winning a game this early in their kind of timeline in terms of dynasty timeline type deal would be huge. And I think it would just go to show that Joe Burrow is not just a very good QB, but he's already one of the greats in the league, and he will probably come for not just one ring, but multiple.
Now, with the 49ers, Tart drops the easiest pick he was going to get in his life. And that was pretty much the game there, I think, because then the 49ers, they're going to be playing from ahead. They don't have to throw. But that's what happens there. On the other side, the AFC game, Eli Apple, who was absolutely horrible. For years, I think this guy's one of the worst cornerbacks in the league. He drops a pick six to send his team to the Super Bowl, and then gets bailed out as Mahomes throws a pick on the very next play. And as I predicted on our show last Friday, McPherson would kick the Bengals to the Super Bowl. I love it. A breath of fresh air here. We mentioned how all these quarterbacks have retired and moved on. We needed to see some new stars in the Super Bowl. That's why I was really rooting hard for the Bills, because I thought Josh Allen was the next big-time quarterback. But same result here. We get Joe Burrow in the Super Bowl. And, the Bengals they're not winning or losing because of Joe Burrow is like the way he's playing. It just, his leadership has been tremendous. He's basically, if you look at his games, he's basically throwing like 2 touchdowns and a pick for 230, 245 yards. He's getting sacked a bunch, but when it comes down to it, the team believes in him, and leadership wise, he's been incredible. And with McPherson's kicking, this team like this is a team of destiny at this point.
Yeah, I really do like this team. And I mentioned it earlier. We kind of both agreed on it. They kind of remind us of the Carolina team when Cam Newton had them. Like the whole team momentum is so strong that this is going to be a tough team to go against. And for Carolina in the Super Bowl, they just were slowed down by a defense that was just such a stonewall. I don't think the Rams are that dominant of a team. I think this is a very top-heavy roster. So, if you're able to kind of win in the trenches, and they have guys like Trey Hendrickson, guys like DJ Reader, guys like Sam Hubbard that are really going to help, they definitely have a chance. And I think that's something that Cincinnati is going to have to win in that game. They have to hold up on the offensive line, which is where the real issue comes in. Can they slow down an Aaron McDonald? Can they stay away from Jalen Ramsey in the pass game? That's going to be huge. And I think this is going to be an extremely fun game. We'll obviously talk more about it as the week goes on. We got Monday, we got Friday, but I'm really excited for this game, and I can't wait to see what the result is.
Hopefully it's a good game. And most of the Bengals games have been very close. So anybody who's thinking the Rams are going to blow out the Bengals, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree. And, as much as we could talk playoff football, we got to get going to this mock offseason blueprint, a team that relates to the Super Bowl because Matt Stafford played so much of his career there. The Detroit Lions looking for a chance to kind of rebuild and get back into a quality team and then hopefully build up from there. And it starts at the mock draft. Look, in the first round, I think they're going to end up picking Aiden Hutchinson. And for some reason, the numbers didn't save properly. So I apologize for that for some of these. But Aiden Hutchinson is the pick that I think they make at number 2. Edge rusher, it's between Thibodeau and Hutchinson probably for that number 1 pick. If the Lions stay at number 2, I think that's the guy they pick up. I think they bring him in, and we'll be very happy with it overall. Christian Harris would be the next pick for me. I think this is someone that has so much talent, so much potential. You're looking at a guy that really could bring your defense and linebacker unit up, and I think that's something that they just absolutely need. So this pick would be not the 33rd pick, but this would be with the 32nd pick. Again, sorry, I don't know why the numbers didn't save properly, but 32nd pick, Christian Harris, someone that I think really would be tremendous for this defense. The linebacker unit kind of has its question marks. I think Harris is one of the more well-rounded linebackers in the game. At number 34, George Pickens is the guy I go with. Receiver is a big need for this team. We saw it last year. Amon-Ra St. Brown obviously built up the unit and was able to produce as the season went on. And he really looks like a long-term piece. But the other guys, I think there's question marks. I'm not 100% sold on a Quintez Cephas being a long-term starter for this team. So while I don't think you have to overhaul the wide receiver unit, I think adding a guy like George Pickens would be absolutely huge for it. With the 66th pick, I got them going with Jalen Petrie, safety out of Baylor. I think he's a great, strong safety prospect. He's someone that I think could absolutely help out this defense. They seem to run a lot of 3 safety looks. I think you kind of look at Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Petrie. I think could do a lot of the same stuff. I'm really excited to see what he can do at the NFL. He's kind of almost like a linebacker with how he plays physically, but he's able to do it all. A very talented player and someone that I think in a Detroit defense, especially with Aaron Glenn at the defense coordinator spot, he'd be an absolute stud. At pick number 97, I have him going Chris Hinton, the defensive lineman out of Michigan. Double dipping on the Michigan defensive line, but Hinton is someone that I really like in this class, someone that I think is a little bit underrated. I think he's got quality pass rush moves, quality ability in the game to make plays and make things happen for him. So you look at what could really happen for this defensive line. Yes, they got Alan McNeil. Yes, they got Levi Onwuzurike, but I think you add in Chris Hinton for youth on that line. I think you add him as a hopeful starter after some development. And I think you got your defensive line of the future, and I think that's a huge addition with Hinton being picked. At pick 176, I got them going Nephi Sewell, the linebacker out of Utah. Yes, he is related to Penei Sewell. I believe they are cousins. I think Sewell's a very talented guy that has kind of gotten more attention as the season went on, and he's someone that I think could really add into this linebacker unit. I don't think you overhaul the linebacker unit. I think you bring back a Jalen Reeves-Maven. Like I said in this below part where you talk about re-signings and signings, I think Jalen Reeves-Maven comes back, but I don't think Anzalone does. Adding Sewell into that defensive just unit, I think is absolutely huge, and he's a safe player. At pick 180, I add Alec Anderson. I think you kind of want that swing tackle type player to help out your depth on the offensive line. Anderson's someone that I think is a little bit of a sleeper in this class, someone that I think could definitely add some value to this team. And, really it's just as simple as that, adding depth on the offensive line, especially with the injuries Decker's kind of dealt with. I think Anderson could be a huge addition. At pick 218, I have them going Caleb Ellaby. I think they pass on QB this year, go for Jared Goff. I love the fit of Malik Willis on this team, but I think right now you kind of go with a QB mid-round that you like, even if that's as early as that pick 97. We saw it with the Texans. They drafted Davis Mills, and a lot of people were still mocking them at QB, and if he wasn't 100% like dominant, then they would have. But, you draft someone like an Ellaby or someone just mid-round, maybe even Bailey Zapp at 97 or something, and you see how they are. And if they can help you at the QB spot and they seem like a long-term answer, then great. And if not, then you look at it next year. That's why I went with Ellaby here. I don't think he's necessarily going to be this guy that is going to be your franchise quarterback of the future, but I think he has some nice tools, mobility, arm strength, just capabilities as a passer that really kind of give you the option to get him some playtime, get him some snaps, and see what you have in him. At 231, I'm going with Dontario Drummond. I think just adding depth to this wide receiver unit is crucial, but Drummond is someone that I actually really enjoy, and I think he could really help out this unit. I think you're looking at a unit that, while maybe Quintez Cephas and Amon-Ra St. Brown are guys that can start, you still need to add some pieces. So I double dip at wide receiver with a late round pick here, and I think Drummond adds nicely to that unit. And then Lucas Kroll at 239, an athletic tight end that never really got it going development-wise, had some injuries, but I think he's still someone that could pop off at the NFL level. I think he's got some special teams capabilities. So adding him to this unit, adding him to the tight end room, maybe he can become someone that plays opposite TJ Hawkinson. And if he booms, then great. It's a wonderful pick. But if not, that's all right. And it's just someone that's kind of athletic and you cut your losses. But I think with the Lions, your team that you're still early in the rebuild that's swinging for the fences, especially with these late picks, is perfectly fine. I think Lucas Krull's a nice little swing for the fences type pick. For the offseason moves, I have them signing Marcus Williams to a 4-year, $60 million contract, getting that safety room completely filled out with Tracy Walker, Jalen Petrie, and Marcus Williams, I think, is huge. For re-signings, I have them bring back Jason Kabinda, Khalif Raymond, Will Holden, Evan Brown, Nick Williams on the defensive line, Jalen Reeves-Maven as a linebacker, and Dean Marlowe as a safety. So I didn't have him bring back Tracy Walker. Sorry about that. Misspoke there. But with this draft, I think they put themselves on the right path to kind of rebuild this team. Nick, looking at this draft, obviously you're huge on Hutchinson. You think he's the best player in this draft. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of talented pieces in this draft, and the Lions have plenty of needs. what do you think of this draft for them, and what do you think of the Lions going forward?
I like this idea of putting the two Michigan guys together in Michigan, in Detroit, Michigan. I mean, that's pretty fantastic. I think the fans would like that. There'd be a great comfortability level between the two guys. So if you get Hinton along with Hutchinson, I think that'd be tremendous. And I mean, to me, you're going with Pickens here, you're going with Drummond, and then you got Anderson in the fourth. I think maybe they need to go for offensive line with their second round pick, but they have so many needs, and it's really tough for this team. But I think the best way to build a football team is always with the lines, and that's what the Lions
I think their offensive line is one of the best in football. Honestly, I think with Taylor Decker, Penei Sewell at tackles, you're set there. Mm-hmm. The big question mark is Vaitai at right guard because he's expensive, and they could cut him and maybe create some space. But I mean, I think Decker and Sewell is one of the better tackle duos. Jonah Jackson just made a Pro Bowl. I think he's a very good offensive guard. Vaitai, if they keep him, is solid. And I think Frank Ragnow, as long as he's healthy, is a very good addition to this line as well. So I think offensive line, it's a weird situation because, obviously the Lions have their issues, but they have one of the better offensive lines in football.
Fair enough. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
So looking at the offense for this team, Jared Goff returns at quarterback. Is he the long-term answer? Who knows? But I do think that he could get another year. He started to get going pretty well at the end of the year as well. I think that was something that I really like to see from him, to where the Lions, I don't think, are forced to move off of him. DeAndre Swift at running back, I think Jamal Williams is back there as well, helping out. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a stud. I really like what he did at receiver, so you absolutely have him coming back. Quintez Cephas holds down another spot. George Pickens obviously added in there as well. TJ Hawkinson at tight end, I think this is someone that's going to really kind of continue to grow and continue to produce for your team. And that offensive line, we just kind of talked about it, but I think you can return the entire unit with Vaitai, Sewell, Decker, Jackson, Ragnow. I mean, this is a good unit. Obviously, the health is the big concern. Ragnow's missed a few games. Decker's missed a few games. Vaitai's had some injuries. So there's some question marks in that regard in terms of durability that could warrant the Lions picking someone early. But I think in terms of on paper, I really like their offensive line. The defense is where things come into question. And that's really what is going to have to be addressed here in this draft. Defensive line, I think you roll it back with Williams, McNeil, and Onwuzurike. Obviously, you have Hinton in this draft that would help the defensive line. But, right now, I think that's a good young unit. Williams, a little bit of a veteran option. But McNeil and Onwuzurike are guys I think are long-term pieces for this team. Christian Harris and Jalen Reeves-Maybin at linebacker. I think you're still looking at linebacker as a need once you leave this draft. But I think you can roll with it for a year, especially with Sewell, hopefully maybe being able to step up. But if not, you draft linebacker next year. I think that's one of your biggest priorities, is getting someone like a linebacker next to Christian Harris in that unit. At the edge, you got Aiden Hutchinson and Romeo Okwara. I think that's very good for them. If they're trying to be a 4-3 team, then I think that's a very good unit. If they're trying to be a 3-4 team, maybe they move off Okwara eventually. I think they cut Trey Flowers, but right now that edge unit is about as solid as you can be for the Detroit Lions. At corner, Monty Oruwariye, I think you have to bring back. Jeff Okuda, someone you got to bring back. I think there's been some trade rumors for him, but definitely a solid guy. A.J. Parker and Jerry Jacobs, I think, are very quality corners as well to add depth to that unit. And I think that's just – it's a young unit. It's something that's been built from the ground up, but I really like what they're doing with it. And I think once you kind of get the pressure going for the Lions, the cornerback unit will also play well. And then a strong safety and free safety, Marcus Williams and Jalen Petrie, talked about in the mock offseason, mock draft part of this. So the Lions have plenty of young growing pains that could be had with a season like this and a roster like this, but I think they're on their way. I like Campbell. I like Glenn. Nick, what do you think of this Lions team? What do you think of this offseason blueprint? And do you think, what should be the expectation from the Lions next season?
5 wins, I think, is probably the expectation. I think Dan Campbell proved that he can get creative, and he maybe is the right man for the job. I think Aiden Hutchinson and Romeo Okwara be one of the better edge rushing duos in the league. So that would be pretty awesome for them. And other than that, I mean, obviously they got a lot of work. You see a lot of new players in here overall. It'd be 5 new players coming in on this defense, and defense is going to be crucial for the Lions moving forward.
Absolutely, and I think they have the right pieces in place. It's just getting that thing built up is going to take some time. They don't have the most offseason money, so I think they're not necessarily going to be able to splurge. I think getting one big signing and kind of continuing to build through the draft is big for them, and that's how I do it here for Destination Draft Day. We appreciate everyone for tuning in. We appreciate LandryFootball.com for the platform. For Nick Durst and Michael Rochman, we appreciate everyone who tuned in. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you on Monday. Take care.